afternoon. Welcome back. We are continuing the regular meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners for Tuesday, February 27th. And first on our afternoon's agenda is an item from Public Works. So we'll invite staff to the table. I'll welcome our senior planner, Jared Bowder, and looks like you're here on your own.
For the first reading.
Okay, great. Welcome. I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, I'm Jared Bowder, the County Planner and Project Manager for the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan. This is a first reading for ordinance number PA 1391, Land Management Division File number 509, PA 23-05532. Directly following the board's motion on the first reading, we'll be conducting a work session with the City of Eugene. Terry Harding is here for that presentation, and in the work session, we'll dive into a little bit more detail about the project that I'm about to for this first reading. Lane County's role in passing ordinance number PA 1391 involves amending the Metro Plan and adopting the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan. No code amendments are proposed outside the city's urban growth boundary. The draft River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan and the proposed Metro Plan text amendments are included in Attachment 1 of the agenda cover memo for today's first reading. The River Road and Santa Clara community organizations, city and county staff, consultants, and neighborhood volunteers have been working together since the spring of 2017 to create a neighborhood plan for the River Road and Santa Clara neighborhoods. The plan focuses on 5 topic areas, those being land use, transportation, economic development, parks and natural resources, and community. Each with a vision statement and associated goals, policies, all with the aim of planning for the future and improving the quality of life within these communities. The proposed amendments require co-adoption by Lane County and Eugene as they apply to urbanizable lands within the Eugene urban growth boundary. And the item before you today is also a request for the board to set a second reading and public hearing for March 12th, 2024, time certain at 6 p.m. with an all virtual meeting format. At that time, staff will provide a more comprehensive staff report on the project, and there will be an opportunity for public comment. And with that, I'll include my presentation for the first reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will turn over the board to see if there are any questions at this point. No? Then welcome to the table, Ms. Harding from City of Eugene.
Thank you.
So at this time, I think it'd be appropriate for the board to make a motion to set the second reading. Terry's getting ready for the work session.
Chair, I move to approve the first reading of the ordinance number PA 1391 and to set the second reading and joint public hearing with the Eugene City Council for March 12, 2024 at 6 p.m. date and time certain with an all virtual meeting format.
I'll second. Been moved by Vice Chair Lovell, seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the first reading and set the second reading and joint public hearing and work session on ordinance PA 1391. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. And so, yeah, now I'll introduce Terry Harding, Principal Planner with the City of Eugene. We're going to transition into a work session presentation to be followed with an opportunity for the board to ask us any questions. And so we can go ahead and pull up your presentation.
Good afternoon again. Thank you for having me here today. It's been a number of years in the making, this project, and it's a very exciting milestone to be before you and headed towards a public hearing, so thank you. I'm going to give you some background on the plan and then have plenty of time for questions. Again, public hearing opportunity is March 12th, so today is really a chance to understand what you might be hearing testimony about or what's included in the plan and clarify anything that might be unclear. I will talk about the process of preparing the plan, what's in the adoption package itself, what the Lane County and Eugene Planning Commissions included in their recommendations, and then next steps for council and board adoption. The first three phases of the project, reaching out, visioning, and neighborhood priorities, focused on asking community members what they value in their neighborhoods now and about their hopes and visions for the future. The policy development phase focused on drafting policies that relate to the vision and neighborhood priorities. The draft policies are organized under 18 high-level goals. The action planning phase focused on drafting, evaluating, and prioritizing actions which the community identified as possible strategies to implement the neighborhood plan policies. In 2021, the Eugene City Council and the Lane County Board of Commissioners directed staff to move into the adoption phase and prepare the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan adoption package for community review. Between 2021 and 2023, the project went through a period of adjustment to align the plan with recent state legislation, while implementing the most critical parts of the original vision. We've spent the last couple of years doing community outreach on a complete draft plan and code amendment adoption package. Today, we'll go over the results of the outreach, the Community Advisory Committee and Community Organization recommendations, and the outcome of the Planning Commission review process. There have been a number of challenges for the project, as I mentioned, particularly since 2020, including the pandemic, which shifted all of our outreach online, and a number of new state mandates. The Middle Housing Law was applied equally to all R1 low-density residential land throughout the city of Eugene, and so that changed the way that this plan was envisioning dealing with housing and where different densities would apply. More state legislation about climate-friendly housing and equitable outcomes came along and focused on both reducing emissions and planning for more compact, smaller housing options. Removing barriers to housing is a statewide priority like never before. In response, the plan and implementation tools were updated to comply with the new laws. The vision, goals, and policies remain largely intact after 5 or 6 years of community work, but some aspects needed to shift, particularly with the zoning and code implementation. The neighborhood planning elements are shown here on the screen. We have the neighborhood plan itself, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail in a moment, a complementary action plan, which is non-regulatory and contains a catalog of community ideas to implement over time. For an example, there's a number of actions related to the construction and implementation of Santa Clara Community Park. This is a piece of property that was brought into the urban growth boundary in 2017. It then needed to be rezoned, annexed, planned, and now is finally entering construction. There is a package of city land use code amendments, and I'd like to stress that those are for consideration only by the city of Eugene because they will only apply within the city limits. They're subject of your public hearing because that's easier for the public to just have one hearing time to come and weigh in on all the different aspects of the plan, but it does make it a little bit more confusing for the decision makers to sort through what aspects you're ultimately voting on. But for Lane County, you're focused on the plan and amendments to the Metro Plan, not the city's code amendments. Those are the documents that we're amending. I'll also note that there is an existing refinement plan that was adopted in 1987, the Urban Facilities Plan, and that is proposed to remain in effect. The new neighborhood plan will exist alongside that plan. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail as well. The neighborhood plan itself contains 5 topic areas, and they are community, economic development, land use, parks and natural resources, and transportation. And for each of those topic areas, there is a vision statement, a number of goals, and then policies that implement those broad goals. Once adopted, this neighborhood plan will become a guiding land use document adopted under the statewide planning system in compliance with the statewide planning goals. As far as the Metro Plan amendments, they are they're to remove a section that was written in the 80s, section 2F. Start, Dan. This section of the Metro Plan relates to River Road and Santa Clara goals, findings, objectives, and policies from the 80s. A lot of that text relates to providing sanitary sewer to the area and which jurisdiction would do that and how it would be accomplished. And so it's out of date. However, we are proposing to move one policy from that section of the Metro Plan into the new neighborhood plan. And that's policy 3 regarding annexation and how the city of Eugene handles that on a volunteer basis as property owners are eligible and elect to join the city. For the code amendments, so you're familiar with what those are trying to accomplish, these are the goals. Implement high-priority land use policies and actions, promote walkable neighborhoods through pedestrian-oriented design standards, and over time, shift to a less auto-oriented land use pattern to align with citywide climate and transportation goals. These are the areas, you can see the zoning on this map, and it's a little hard to see, but I want to call your attention to the pink areas. They are the city's community commercial zone. And the majority of the code amendments apply to those areas. They are primarily along River Road, although there are some outlying C2 zoned areas on Irvington and Maxwell and along River Avenue. One of the code amendments that got a lot of attention during the Planning Commission process was a proposal to disallow certain uses, including auto-oriented uses such as motor vehicle sales and service, watercraft and boat sales and service, and commercial storage areas and enclosed commercial storage facilities. You can see that this area has a mixture of pink and purple zoning on this map. That's commercial and industrial, and the area is between the Metro wastewater treatment plant and the Beltline Highway. So the character of this area is quite different than the main River Road corridor or the outlying commercial areas. So through the course of the Planning Commission process, it was determined that this area should not be included in the code amendment that would remove those uses that I mentioned as allowable uses. And there is a lot of testimony about this in the Planning Commission record, and I anticipate you'll hear about it. But this solution was offered by staff and recommended by both planning commissions, sorry, not Lane County Planning Commission. Scratch that. They did talk about it, had questions about it. But the City Planning Commission did make a recommendation to exclude this area from that code amendment, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. Backing up to the process last summer, there was a period of community feedback, including a workshop at North Eugene High School, a community survey, and neighborhood meetings with both community organizations. We received a lot of great feedback, generally consistent with comments received throughout the process. The community feedback helped inform the official recommendations of ARCO, SACO, and the CAC, which was to move the plan forward to the public hearings, continue to collaborate with staff from both city and county on implementing the plan itself and the ideas contained in the action plan, and to use the corridor study, which was a federally funded study of the River Road corridor, and the many years of input to inform future planning efforts. We really don't want to lose all of the effort and comments that were made by thousands of hours of volunteer participation in this process. Let's see. The Planning Commission's joint hearing was held in October, and then Eugene deliberated in November and early December. It came to the Lane County Planning Commission on December 19th. And ultimately, the County Planning Commission recommendation was to adopt the new neighborhood plan, adopt the Metro Plan amendments, and as I mentioned before, keep in place the 1987 Urban Facilities Plan. Next steps include a public hearing and then separate action by both the City Council on April 22nd and the County Board on April 23rd. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. To the board. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. I had a few questions, and Ms. Harding, we talked about that in the phone call that we had before, and I just want to put it out there for the public to know kind of what I'm thinking about this as well. As I think about those little pockets that you have, those circles about economic development, obviously without the addition of the River Road plan, it looks like all of those are basically small businesses. I mean, it's not like we're going to put some 50 business manufacturing kind of firm in those small circles where they're dotted up River Road. Is that probably true? And
Let me clarify what the circles are on that map. They are intended to be illustrative of mixed-use areas, kind of regardless of how they're actually zoned. The community commercial zone does allow a mixture of uses, so small, big businesses and housing are all allowed in the community commercial zone.
Oh, so there could be a possibility where there'd be a larger employer in one of those. Okay, so I guess my follow-up question to that was, is there any thinking to the neighborhood plan to put some pressure or some emphasis on the city to maybe have similar things like Springfield does, have SDC buybacks that would incentivize smaller businesses to come in, move into those areas on basically their own dime to help economically develop the area?
That's a good question. There was a lot of interest in economic development strategies and a lot of discussion around how to help small businesses throughout the plan. Any strategies that involve incentives would be a next step. So SDCs or other city incentive programs are going to be considered on a citywide basis rather than a direct outcome of this plan. But there is, I would say there is interest and policy support in the neighborhood plan for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we also talked about, too, about the interest level of, you said voluntary annexation, and, I grew up as a kid out in that area, so I've been familiar with the angst of who wants to annex and who doesn't, like I'm sure you're very familiar with. But we had talked, too, about just an idea that in the future about trying to consolidate public safety and to try to see how that could work as an incentive. I mean, if I was presented as a homeowner, hey, either you annex here and it only costs you $150 to have great service in public safety and no confusion between sheriffs and the Eugene Police Department versus another increase that would be more. I mean, maybe there could be some, I guess, lack of a better word, a deal could be made to make people more incentivized to consolidate annexation so they can get better services.
Right. The topic of service delivery and service coordination was definitely there throughout the whole planning process. It's a major reason for why this area needed an updated plan in the first place. But it was pretty important to all parties at the beginning that this plan focus on the vision and on providing a plan that would serve as a policy foundation for the whole area. And that regardless of whether you're in or outside the city limits, it's a plan for everyone. And again, similar to economic development incentives, annexation tools would be an outcome of later work and not accomplished by the plan itself. Still more work to do
Yeah,
on that.
sounds like it. Great work so far. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yes, thank you. Well, as you can imagine, this has been quite the topic at the Santa Clara organization, River Road community organization groups lately. And I have heard a lot of input on, and it's great you brought your own map up. I'm on page 99 about light, medium industrial and community commercial. How did you go through and decide which was going to be which between River Avenue and Beltline there?
The map that I showed is existing zoning. So that is a result of past actions. That whole area along River Avenue is planned to be commercial in the future. However, existing zoning does allow industrial uses, and there is a mix on that area of industrial and commercial businesses.
Gotcha. So one of the concerns was like, say, Clemens Marine. It could always be there and could actually expand if need be at some point.
Right, exactly.
Perfect. Then I had a question. You brought up regarding annexation into the city. What is I mean, what are you hearing as the city about people wanting to annex or not annex in? What's the general consensus?
It's really case by case, I
Yeah.
would say, and our land use planners probably have more information about this than I do, but I do know that, for example, the middle housing law, when that went into effect, that applies to city properties only. So a property on, say, Howard or some county road that's not annexed is not eligible yet to take advantage of the middle housing allowances. And if they're not adjacent to city limits, they're not eligible to annex. So there is a kind of conundrum, for lack of a better word, for those who would want to do further development on their property and are not yet eligible. But nonetheless, we have seen incremental development, and the county's zoning allows an ADU on an unannexed property. So some of that has been happening. I don't have the numbers, but those are allowed without annexing. Otherwise, you would need to annex to do further development. It's been pretty incremental, pretty slow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hear a lot from, I'll call them the never annexers, but I wasn't sure what you guys were hearing about people that were wanting to annex it. Thank you.
Great.
I do then.
Oh, Commissioner Farr.
Looking to see if Commissioner Bug wanted to speak first. Good morning, Ms. Harding. Good to see you again. When I was a state rep decades ago, I represented Santa Clara. And then my first 10 years as a commissioner, I represented River Road. Now I don't represent any of those neighborhoods. That being said, I've been a part of the process all along, and it has evolved. From the plans that we were looking at 20 years ago have evolved pretty significantly to what we see today and what you've gone through with the River Road and Santa Clara neighbors. And I want to commend you, take a moment to commend the effort that you've put into that. You've tremendous effort. Large group meetings, taking input from, I would guess, hundreds and hundreds of people along the way, the neighbors, et cetera. But there's only one thing that I want to talk about today, and it's one thing that really comes to mind for a lot of people as we develop this plan. And I don't expect a comprehensive response at this point in time, but I'm going to talk about Echo Apartments and the big issue that came up, the failure, according to the neighbors, of what happened with Echo Apartments, where I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were, but the number of parking spaces that were required per apartment fell far short of the needs for parking for those apartments. And consequently, all of the non-annexed neighborhoods, the streets and non-annexed neighborhoods adjacent to Haddon, day and night had issues for months and months, even years, regarding parking. And as we move forward with the plan, I see some of the development is allowing or requiring like fourplexes with 2 parking spaces, fourplexes that potentially have 4 cars, allowing 2 parking spaces. Talk a little bit about how are we going to handle that? How do you mitigate the impact on the neighborhoods? Not just the parking, because many of those streets, as you know, aren't at city standards. They have either a ditch or no ditch, but they have no sidewalks, no curbs, no drainage. But still, I have photos, lots and lots and lots of photos. Steve Mocker High School was in the driveway with me at least a couple of times talking about this. The sheriffs were out there talking about it, how do we handle it? And the police department, the EPD, once you annex the streets, it gave a little bit of enforcement latitude. But how are we going to handle that? I mean, we have people living there trying to get their kids to walking to school in the morning. You've got people parking on the streets.
Great point.
And I beg your pardon, Terry. Part of that is talk about what the vision for the city of Eugene is regarding allowing that few parking spaces per unit.
Sure.
Just pull your mic a little closer.
Oh, thank you.
As you said, it'd be hard to provide a comprehensive answer, but I know you will hear testimony about this, so I think it's a great point to bring up. The first thing I would say is that there is a broad awareness, as I'm sure you all know, of the parking issues and the just urban transition issues as properties develop, and especially high-density apartments, and bring a lot of new people and a lot of new cars to the neighborhood, and the streets aren't all equipped to handle curbside parking and those sorts of things. So there is a whole section of the plan dedicated to transportation. There's a whole section of the plan dedicated to land use. And one of the policies, I can't remember if it's in transportation or in community because that deals with jurisdictional issues. But the policy that we developed in collaboration with county staff and city public works staff is around jurisdictional transfer and continued collaboration around right-of-way issues. That's sort of the right-of-way management part. It's an ongoing thing. There's so many streets that need to be dealt with that it will take a long time to prioritize them and deal with them. The other part has to do with development and land use and parking standards, and recent legislation through the Climate Friendly Equitable Communities rulemaking actually resulted in the city eliminating parking requirements altogether. So we don't have any city parking requirements for new development. That doesn't mean developers won't provide parking. They are continuing to still provide parking, but the regulatory landscape has really changed. And so,
If I may ask, that means they can provide zero if they would.
correct, they can. They can, and we don't have a way to require them to provide parking, but we do have a transportation options program. We do have staff dedicated to helping people provide parking passes and bus passes and other alternatives. But it's a really large part of what ongoing collaboration with the neighborhood organizations looks like, in my mind, because as every new development comes forward, there are issues on this street or that street, and there are city staff who are wanting to help solve those issues. So I see that kind of there's policy support, and then there's a lot of actions and ongoing work that we'll just have to take case by case as new development goes in.
I think that's a superb answer, Terry. You've talked about the process as it got to this point, and you've talked about what the city's priorities are and what and what the future may look like regarding the city's priorities. It doesn't affect the fact that people are having trouble finding a parking space when they get home at night, and it doesn't today. I mean, it's still around Hatton. It's still that same way, and to a certain extent. But you know, and I do believe that you're on top of that. And thinking about it a little bit, because people have spoken to you far more eloquently than I ever could, because they're talking about their own turf, their own neighborhood, and people get very, very proprietary about that, as you understand. And you know, I think you do have a safety plan. You know that fire engines have to get down there, and they have to be able to turn the corners. And you know, I'm sure you've walked those streets. You know that there were days and times and weeks and months on end where fire engines couldn't have turned corners down there because people were parking in front of hydrants, parking in front of driveways, and people had to put their trash cans out in front of their house and leave them there 7 days a week so people wouldn't park directly in front of their house. So trying to get around all of that and make it easier for people to attain or to retain the standard of living that they have without having to fight off other people who are sometimes a little bit aggressive about how they park and how they use other people's properties. So thanks for being on top of it. You've heard me talk about it before, and you'll hear people in the neighborhood talk about further as we move forward. But for the people living there today, that is a big issue. Parking is a big issue, and how we accommodate parking that flows over from new development. And we have a strong push to multifamily housing. Everybody agrees with it. You know, we need more front doors. We need more front doors. And your statement that you just said, the statewide more than ever is reducing impediments to adding housing. And a part of that is more houses per square foot, or per acre. And as we move forward with that, balancing what we have today and making certain that people are able to, once again, maintain their current standard of living and safety for their kids walking to school. And Terry, excuse me, Ms. Harding, you've been on top of that, I know. So thanks for continuing that work.
Great. I have just two questions. The justification for exempting that section of River Avenue from the restricted uses, is that based on because of the current businesses and uses there?
It's a combination of things. The original idea for shifting away from those types of uses was focused on the corridor, River Road corridor itself. That coupled with the existing zoning and development pattern and impacts that those code exclusions would have on those businesses, I think, led to the recommendation.
Was there any discussion of a provision that says when or if those properties change hands, it's an opportunity to reconsider applying the zoning, or?
Not specifically, but like any code amendment, it's revisitable by the city council if and when it doesn't play out the way it's intended. Yeah, so we could do something like that.
I want to also applaud this neighborhoods. I know their work correct me if I'm wrong, but in large part, it's also to stop taking up acres and acres of buildable land for housing with storage units, which is just a weird companion increase in the need for those as people don't have homes to keep their belongings in. We keep paving over acres to put storage sheds for belongings instead of homes. Like, it's just a weird inverse math problem. So kudos to them for taking that stance. My only other, just make sure I'm following the comment before about ADUs and the county addresses that are not adjacent to a city address, therefore couldn't annex even if they wanted to, but could still have ADUs. But they're still subject to the ADU acreage limitation that we inherited from the state, right? And so I can't imagine there's terribly many properties that can actually build an ADU because of that. Is that accurate?
I think Terry was speaking to ADUs allowed within the urbanizing area of the urban growth boundary as opposed to rural ADUs that do have the acreage requirement.
So the rural ADU doesn't apply
Correct.
to the, okay, so there's yet another set of standards. Great, that's all I have then, thank you. All right, great, I think that looks like, without any further comment, anything else from staff?
Oh, thank you very much for your time. We'll
Yeah,
see you on
we'll
March
see you in a
12th.
couple weeks, yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Then next on our agenda, item 12A is a report from our Human Services Division on Homeless Response System and Community Action Funding with a presentation and then discussion. And I'll welcome Kate Budd, our Human Services Manager, and looks like Eve Gray, our Director of Health and Human Services. And is Lynn Oliver with us online, or is she not with us?
She is online,
She
yes.
is. And Lynn Oliver online. Great, welcome. Whenever you're ready.
Assistant Director Inman is also online.
Oh, great. Thanks for that.
All right, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to chat with you today. We are here to talk about the Human Services Division budget for fiscal year 25. Firstly, I'd like to just chat with you to help you understand where we are regarding the COVID artificial inflation of resources. As you're well aware, due to the COVID crisis, Lane County received considerable dollars focused on reducing the impacts, the symptoms of COVID, as well as helping those who experienced kind of negative results due to COVID help to recover from those. Through the Human Services Division, we were fortunate to receive significant dollars to be able to make those investments. And our COVID-focused dollars are waning as we move through this fiscal year and will be significantly less when we go into the next fiscal year, particularly knowing that all of our COVID dollars through Lane County need to be spent out by December 31st of this year. Intending on sharing the pros and cons of macro level policy options that have been discussed both with staff and our Poverty and Homelessness Board, which for the Human Services Division is our continuum of care board, as well as the Community Action Board, which oversees many of the dollars that we receive, particularly for community action and homelessness resources. And so we'll share with you the feedback that was received from the Poverty and Homelessness Board, run through the pros and cons of the different options, and then also share with you staff recommendations regarding those high-level policy options. So firstly, I just want to share what a healthy homeless crisis response system looks like. And it very much is having a full array of components that help to identify those who are houseless, engage with them to understand what services they're in need of, to help connect them with those resources and help move them into whether it's emergency shelter, and then they move into permanent housing, or directly from the street into permanent housing. And so as we're thinking about how our overall array of programming would be reduced, it is important that we sustain this full system response, and that we not just decide we're going to do away with one piece of it, such as outreach and engagement, for example. So this visual shows the overall amount of Lane County, both general fund and the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA dollars, that the Human Services Division has received. And you might recall I actually shared a very similar visual last time I was here with you. But the point I'd like to make with this visual is, as you can see, if you look to the right under 2023, 2024, that blue line is very significant, and that represents the amount of ARPA dollars that the Human Services Division relied upon for both fiscal years. It's considerable, as you can see, as was the effects of COVID during those years, and so we were very fortunate to have those funds. But now our opportunity is to right-size our programming as we move beyond the inflation due to COVID. This pie chart is a visual regarding the overall breakdown of our Human Services Division funding during this current fiscal year. As you can see, the majority of our dollars, I shouldn't say the majority, the highest percentage of our dollars goes to emergency and seasonal shelter. So for example, the Navigation Center, Schenkel Brooklyn Street, Dawn to Dawn are all examples of emergency shelters that Lane County Human Services Division funds. The second program focus area is around availability and access to supportive housing, and that very much focuses on rehousing, so helping folks who are either living on the street or in emergency shelter move into permanent housing through many different types of programs. And so as we look at this breakdown, again, it is important that we maintain the array of services that we have in order to be able to have that full continuum of care, and recognize that we do have a significant investment, which I'll share with you in a moment, coming from the executive order funding, or all-in. And so as we think about reducing our programming dollars, it is important to think about, where we're seeing an investment within the all-in funding overall. And so again, the key here being is we don't want to just get rid of one of these focus areas, such as street outreach again.
Just a quick clarifying question. Under the main heading, FYHSD, community action, et cetera, are 1 and 2 asterisk notes. Do those apply to the whole pie chart, or I don't see the corresponding asterisks, so I'm wanting to know what those apply to.
Sure. And so it does apply across the full pie chart.
Thank you.
For example, we receive community development block grant funding from the City of Eugene and Springfield, and they share with us exactly what the program is that we will be funding through those dollars. And then that second, the stars, that again mentions that all-in is not included within this pie chart because it is a siloed, independent program from this work.
Thank you.
So this next visual just helps to share the breakdown of funding that we receive from federal and state sources. On the left, you have what we would refer to as flexible funds. And these funds can be used to support at least more than one program type that we provide. So on the far left, where it says all program types, that's where the COVID ARPA funds are located. You can see the blue, which represents this current fiscal year, is much higher than what we're currently predicting we will receive in fiscal year 25. Those flexible funds, for the most part, with the exception of that outreach shelter, rapid rehousing and prevention column, are all facing a reduction looking toward the next fiscal year. You also have the inflexible funds on the right, and those funds either need to be focused on one specific program type, such as emergency shelter, or need to be focused on an actual program itself, such as our continuum of care funding, where that application has already been submitted and our dollars have been applied toward specific programs at this point. And so overall, we have approximately 28% fewer dollars looking toward fiscal year 25 than we do this year. And so what that equates to is an approximately $4 million kind of reduction that we need to look for in our overall contracted programming budget. So a few other specific reasons why we are facing this reduction of approximately $4 million includes that the state of Oregon chose to allocate emergency shelter dollars that were offered during the last state legislative session, that they be allocated directly to nonprofit agencies within Lane County. And so what that meant is that our opportunity to weave together dollars, to leverage emergency shelter dollars, just didn't come to fruition. And instead, we're having to kind of negotiate with nonprofits that received the emergency shelter funding to understand, what gaps were left after they accounted for the state dollars, and kind of how can we help make sure that they still are opening and able to provide those shelter beds moving forward. We also we had the fortunate reality of receiving other COVID-focused dollars in the last fiscal year and this fiscal year. And so not only were they ARPA dollars, but for example, we receive emergency food and shelter program dollars from FEMA, and they provided COVID-specific funding. And that COVID-specific funding is now finished. And so it's of course, kind of just one layer of another layer of COVID dollars that we're not seeing continue. So I also mentioned that we have a significant investment of funds from the governor's executive order that we are receiving. And the funds themselves are siloed. I don't in any way want to suggest that the programs are siloed, but the funds are siloed. And so they are not able to fill in gaps that programs might be facing in order to help make sure that those programs are fully funded. They have to, All In needs to fund new programs, new beds, and then the focus as we move into the second year is sustaining those programs that were created and the beds that were created. And so I think it's important to share where those All In investments are going. And you can see the vast majority of those dollars are going into rehousing. So that's rapid rehousing as well as diversion assistance, which helps folks who are on the street and in emergency shelter move into permanent housing. And so when thinking about where the reductions of our next fiscal year programming dollars might be focused, there is an opportunity to think about, where the all-in dollars are being invested, and that might be a place where maybe deeper reductions could be focused on. I will also share that the community as a whole, especially when it comes to rehousing, continues to be stretched as to our overall capacity of agencies to offer rehousing supports. And so I have had folks, say how important rehousing is, and I certainly agree. And we have an incredible $9 million coming with that focus, and that is very much stretching our nonprofits to a much a level that they have not experienced in the past, which is the feedback that I'm getting. And so I think it also kind of lends itself to the consideration around reducing programming where All In is making these investments. So when I shared this information with the Poverty and Homelessness Board, I offered these 4 high-level policy options for them to consider. Also shared that the way forward may very much be a hybrid approach, where A and B, for example, could be combined, or that there may be a completely different policy option that I hadn't thought of or staff hadn't thought of. And so not only was there a discussion during the Poverty and Homelessness Board meeting, but there also was an opportunity for PHB board members, stakeholders, committee members, and then the general public to be able to provide feedback through a survey that was shared during the Poverty and Homelessness Board meeting and then also sent out through many different email distribution lists. And so the first policy option that was shared focuses on providing a full request for proposal for all programs. And the pros that not only were discussed but also brainstormed with staff include that an RFP provides a full opportunity for programs to put their best foot forward and share kind of the ideal programming that they would like to offer, as well as to right-size their budget, because we often have heard from agencies that they've been asked to continue to do more and more without getting additional dollars, and of course that they're dealing with inflation among many different focus areas, just like we're seeing in the community. We also have recognized that this approach is aligned with a zero-based budgeting kind of approach that we've used here in the county as we move forward with our budgeting. And then it also allows for the community needs assessment, which was updated in the last year, to be integrated into the decision-making to make sure that the needs our community has shared with us are kind of being held at the highest level as the decisions are being made around which programs to fund. The cons with the full request proposal is that it is significant work for providers to respond to a request for proposal, also significant work for program staff and administrative staff. And then there's also a concern regarding the timeline. We unfortunately only have a few months before the new fiscal year starts, and so it would be a considerable strain on all to go through the RFP process, and then also for agencies to not necessarily know which programs would be funded until likely May or June, which doesn't give them a lot of time to prepare, and more importantly, doesn't give a lot of time for the individuals in their programs to know if something is going to change for them as well. Another policy option was to move forward by simply funding the programs that existed before COVID. We had a robust system prior to COVID, and this option does indeed provide a relatively simple and clear path forward. It would allow for our programs to know pretty quickly which ones would be funded and which ones would be not funded going into the next fiscal year. The other challenge, one of the challenges with this one in particular is that we've learned a lot as a result of COVID. What works really well, what doesn't work well. We've been able to adopt best practices that we didn't have before COVID. And so the concern is that those best practices and those learnings would not be taken into account should this policy option move forward. The next policy option was to fund the programs that come close to the contracted outcomes or outputs. And so currently all of the contracted programs have a program plan which specify the outcomes and or outputs that each program needs to work toward. And staff work within the HMIS system to pull those outcomes and outputs. And for the last 2 years, we've actually shared where the agencies are toward their outcomes and outputs on a quarterly basis with the agencies. The commissioners, you're all aware that we've actually shared on a 6-month basis the outcomes that programs have achieved and the outputs that they've achieved. And so we have been moving forward on being more outcome focused with our programs and helping them really reflect on where they are. And make changes and continue to move toward continuous quality improvement as they work toward these overall outcome and output goals. The strengths of this approach would include that the highest performing programs would be funded. And so if you have programs that are meeting what is being asked of them, that certainly is a strength as we move forward. It would illustrate a continued focus on outcomes and outputs. Not only have we continued to adopt that at the county, but we're seeing it and hearing it loud and clear at the state level and also the federal level, that outcomes and outputs are important to track and to work toward achieving. We also would be able to sunset programs that are not working well to achieve their outcomes. We do have some programs where the achievement is well below 50% of outcomes and outputs, and there's certainly a lot to dig into as to why that might be the case, but it certainly would illustrate that the program has room for significant improvement. And then lastly, at the end of this process, arguably, the programs that remain funded would be the strongest programs that are helping us move the needle toward our overall focus on reducing the number of people who are houseless, reducing the number of people who are in poverty. I think the significant con with this approach is that, as I mentioned earlier, the agencies have been stretched, particularly during COVID, not only because more and more has been asked of them, but also because their cost of doing business continues to rise, and they have not seen their budgets increase, particularly through Lane County, in a few years to a point where there's been significant increases. And so it is a legitimate argument for an agency to share, they would like to achieve the outcomes that are being asked of them, but they haven't received adequate dollars to be able to do that. And then the third policy option is to reduce funding based on where the all-in gaps are supporting the same types of programs. And so the pros of this is the impact of the fewer number of programs would be less significant for our community as a whole. We would continue to see a number of rehousing programs available through All-In, for example. We continue to see 304 improved and additional emergency shelter beds through All-In, for example. We also would kind of continue with that balanced homeless response system where, we wouldn't have, again, a huge number of rehousing programs and very few outreach programs, for example. It would be able to be a bit more balanced. The con with this policy approach is that it does mean the diversity of eligibility requirements would be less. And so a benefit of having a more flexible fund support a rehousing program, for example, is that it may be that someone who doesn't have an eviction notice, for example, can still get assistance, whereas with the all-in programs, one needs to have an eviction notice, and so there would just be less flexibility within the program. And then lastly, I did hear from the PHB meeting that this option could be just another way to, quote, kick the can down the road, and that all-in is not a guaranteed ongoing funding source beyond this current biennium. And so if we were to, recognize the dollars that all-in is supporting, we may be even in a more precarious spot as we move into the next biennium. I will offer that the messaging we're hearing from our governor is an intention to continue with all-in funding beyond this biennium. However, I recognize the governor relies heavily on the legislature to make those dollars a reality. So wanted to share with you feedback that I received from the Poverty and Homelessness Board. Again, there was a survey offered at the end of that meeting, and we received responses from 22 individuals. We lumped them together among both members and stakeholders, and those are folks who are officially voted in as members of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. Members can vote, stakeholders do not vote, but they are part of the membership. Those individuals, their first policy choice was C, that the fund be based on the programs that meet or exceed the outcomes and outputs. We also had another group of folks who may be a part of the vast array of Poverty and Homelessness Board task groups or committees, as well as folks who they're not engaged with the Poverty and Homelessness Board. And that collective group, 60% said that their number one policy choice was to reduce funding based on where the all-in gaps are. To break that survey down a little further, the survey respondents were asked to rank those 4 policy options. And so when they were ranking between 1 to 4, the policy option to conduct a request for proposal was the second most desired option across all populations. And so if you think about the last slide, you had the two most desirable for those 2 populations, and then they all coalesced to that RFP. And then the option to transition back to pre-COVID funding was overwhelmingly the least desired among those 2 populations. And then lastly, C and D, there was only one person who identified either of those, that it was one of those was the worst choice. So basically there were 2 people. One identified C as the worst, one identified D as the worst, and then everyone else felt like that was at least first, second, or third choice. So just a few other pieces of feedback that we received through the survey as well as through the Poverty and Homelessness Board meeting. Just include making sure that we are increasing access to services for people who are minorities within our community. What that says to me is just continuing to work with our culturally specific agencies and groups, and continuing to foster culturally responsive agencies that we work with. Fund more programs for specific populations, and that is certainly something we're looking at. And as we're contracting, it is difficult to create new programs. Look at the balance of services and where reductions would have greater impacts. And I think that point being, how do we reduce the impacts to people in our community? There was someone who specifically called out use a hybrid option. Comment about all in and that perception of kicking the can down the road. Someone who felt like things were much better before COVID. And then also that programs have been underfunded for years, and that it makes achieving outcomes, this person felt, impossible. And so I felt like that was an important piece of feedback as well. And then lastly, I leave you with the Human Services Division staff recommendation, which very much took into account the helpful discussion during the Poverty and Homelessness Board meeting, the survey information, as well as conversations that we have had with staff across the agency. And what we recommend are utilizing a hybrid approach of C, where we're taking outcomes and outputs into account, and then D, where we're also taking the all-in programming investments into account as we move forward. And really, I've mentioned all those benefits. So. We are here because we would very much appreciate your advisement regarding the policy options that are put in front of you, or any other ideas that you might have that we should certainly take into account. And I'm happy to start with questions.
Thank you. Yeah. Director, Health and Human Services Director Eve Gray is with us as well. Did you want to add anything before we turn to the board?
I think Ms. Budd did a fantastic job, so I'm just here to back her up if there are other questions or anything more broadly. This is certainly not the only division where we are having conversations about budget reductions due to the loss of COVID funding. So it was wonderful during COVID to be flooded with all those dollars, and it's really hard to have to contract when we've added wonderful services. So there you go. I did have something to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think we all knew this when the money started coming in. We were like, this is great, but what's it going to feel like? And here we are with what it feels like. So thank you. I'll turn it over to the board. Commissioner Farr.
The only thing I'm going to say, Chair, is that, Ms. Budd, you've heard my ideas, you've answered my questions all along, so I'm going to be really quiet, and hopefully the four of you all can really weigh in on the presentation, the superb presentation that Ms. Budd just gave to us.
Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I will echo my appreciation for the analysis. I had a great time talking with Ms. Budd about the analysis part. The important thing I think we need to do is go by data-driven evidence, which we have done with the help of those ARPA dollars in our process of implementing all-in and analyzing those services. I think the worst thing that we could do is probably just move on without utilizing all that great resource that is now open to the public to review. So I absolutely, hands down, believe in option C. And knowing that we're going to have a change in the amount that we can allocate, D is a given. It's just going to have to be reduced. I'm not sure we can even get out of option D. in some way. So I'm fully supportive of your recommendations to the board. And I'm the same as everybody else, like going back to the way things used to be done, allocated, analyzed before COVID is really not an option either. We've just learned too much since then. And I think the community really needs and wants us to use the data that we've been provided for better choices in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Senega.
Yeah, I will, and very similar to Commissioner Buck, I'd also like to stick with C. We had some great one-on-one conversations. I really appreciate the phone calls and the extra insight. So I do have a question with that kind of hybrid system. So the base would be the funding from option D, and then we would bring the C hybrid part in as the benchmarks to kind of hit as far as which programs we fund, or?
Great question. So what I see is we would firstly, very much look at probably the last 2 years of outcomes and outputs, because the agencies have been actively involved in, understanding and checking to make sure those are accurate. And then we would look at, firstly, those that are meeting and exceeding their outcomes and outputs. And then also keep in mind, how much money do we have? And then continue to work down, 80%, 70%, 60% of the outcomes. And then we would also have an understanding of how much money we were going to dedicate within each of the different program types. And that would also help us understand, how far down within each program outcome that we would be going in order to allocate the dollars. And then also having that focus of the full system, making sure that we have, a program in outreach and a program in children, youth, and family, for example.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was kind of thinking about that when we were going through it too. We bring up that everybody's been stretched a little thin with COVID. I mean, if you have to look at a plus side, is everybody was kind of stretched the same. So to see who came out with, with the best outcomes under those circumstances really should shine right now. So, yeah, thank you. I really appreciate option C.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm going to go with a Commissioner Farr kind of story where he talks about a movie line or a metaphor, and I'm going to say that going back to like what would be those big elephant leg pants that we used to wear in the 70s to what we did before is a terrible idea. So I'm totally on board with that. I do agree with my former colleagues about choice C being the best option. I think particularly what Commissioner Senega said about those people who had readapted under the stress and the load of COVID in the last couple of years, that actually had what they had to work with and made the best use of it, is those are the people we need to focus on, because those are the innovators of tomorrow. What we did in the past is not going to get us to where we need to be in the future. We need people that are forward and future thinking and quick and nimble and agile on their feet, and I would fund those kind of folks all day long. Those are what I call entrepreneurs in my business. So yeah, good job on all this stuff, and I'm right behind C.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll just add to the chorus of appreciation, and also for taking time for a one-on-one briefing. It gave me time to think and be ready for this. And I just, for my own purposes, pulled the slide back up that shows the system, because that's the most important overarching sort of value, is to maintain integrity of the system. And it's just sort of what's the least bad option for which pieces of the system are we going to take some hits. And to my mind, I'm fully in support of C. It's great. When we had our one-on-one prep conversation, we didn't have the results from the PHB yet. And so it's nice to see where I was initially leaning, what your recommendation is, what the PHB's all seems to be lining up. I have a slightly different approach, which is focus on C, because it's the most justifiable. I mean, outcomes, that's what we're here for, is to improve lives. That's the mission of this organization. So why would we not start with outcomes? But the hybrid of blending that with D seems really important to me. as a way to maintain as many elements of the system as intact as possible. Because if we have designated funding to do certain things, putting that all together just seems to make sense to me for the strongest integrity of the system. And I don't know, but I would imagine there's a connection between those options to help make the case to maintain all-in funding with the governor's office and our legislators in future years, that they actually should go together, that we can't disentangle them from one another, because the whole model of all-in is outcomes-driven. So I see them as complementary, with the first, sort of the biggest arms wrapped around C, but with D nestled within it as we accommodate what we learn has to move out of C because of resources. Does that make sense?
It does,
That's,
yes.
that's what I'm seeing. As for the, it has less flexibility with the type of person that can maybe be helped with those dollars. I mean, we're already under-resourced in all the places, so that's sort of less compelling of an argument against. But, we could be here again in 25. We could be, but we might not be. Again, the more we can demonstrate with a primary focus on outcomes and maintaining the integrity of the whole system, the more likely, or the stronger our advocacy to not be here in the future. We shore that up too. So I land on sort of a hybrid approach of focusing on C and incorporating as much of the resource of all-in funds to fill those gaps. Commissioner Farr, and then I have a question actually for Director Gray probably, but.
Okay. Well, you've heard kind of a universal response, which matches, more or less matches the Poverty and Homelessness Board, and more or less matches the input that I've given you. I'd like to point out that, we talked about all-in, and if you've looked at the all-in dashboard, the most recent numbers demonstrate Lane County's capability and our ability to establish outcomes and not only meet but exceed the outcomes. The governor has recognized that, and I think that the governor has recognized and passed it along that all-in, the gubernatorial order that produced all-in worked, and that we have another year of it, or another cycle of it, and that while it's not guaranteed beyond that, the demonstration of the effectiveness is something that we can maybe not rest assured, but rest partially assured at least that it will continue. And so the hybrid of C and D really seems to be a great option as per the staff recommendation. But if you look at the all-in outcomes on homeless prevention programs, we achieved 118% of our goal. On rehousing programs, we achieved 111% of our goal. Better than that, really, because of the households that we had an inordinate number of households that actually were registered in the program, and we anticipate greater response as a residual. And then on emergency shelter beds, we incredibly achieved 132% of our goal. So those kind of results really bode well for the future. So I think you've heard what the board suggests, and it corresponds pretty closely with what you are suggesting to us. So I cannot overemphasize. And Commissioner Buck, you've been through the all-in process. You've been in, I think, just about all of the meetings. So you see how it's a very collaborative discussion. City of Eugene is very involved. Springfield has been involved. So it's a multi-jurisdictional, multi-discipline discussion that we've had, and the outcomes have been tremendous. So bravo. Thank you.
Not putting you on the spot for an answer, but I'm realizing soon, I think in April, Alex Dreher is going to come and talk to us about the ARPA investments, because this is just one piece. I mean, we saw ARPA investments across multiple departments in our organization and also out in the community. And I know one piece of that, we had our competitive grants for community, but then we also designated some dollars for capacity building for our nonprofits, because the theme, I mean, I experienced this as a provider decades ago, but the theme in all your presentations is how stretched our nonprofit partners are, both in their capacity to deliver services and to keep up with wages and benefits for their employees and so on. So is there anything, just to sort of prime the pump for more conversations later about the innovation and the lessons learned and the improvements, the capacity we've been able to build through ARPA dollars, separate from specifically this system, but in our nonprofit, in our provider community. Is there anything worth chiming in about that now?
Sure. So the project that we have that's most focused on this right now is in partnership with the University of Oregon and the 3 p.m. students. So you all will see their final report in June, but there's certainly an opportunity to be involved and weigh in the meantime. We have identified 20 to 30 nonprofits in Lane County who are willing to partner with them to talk about what would it look like, something that would be palatable in a very competitive nonprofit landscape that we have here in Lane County, in order to share resources in some way for some of the back office functions or administrative functions that overlap between the different nonprofit agencies to try and get some sort of economy of scale. You know, we've seen this so much in the private sector in terms of whether it be mergers and acquisitions, which is the very far end, or whether it be some sort of loose partnership to support each other or something in between. And many of these efforts have happened in the past. Commissioner Buck has been involved in these efforts in the past, and there are many organizations that have been. So the question that we are facing right now is, why have those efforts not taken off? And the current hypothesis is that we really need this to be guided and driven by nonprofit agencies, not by funders, which maybe is where it has come from more in the past, in order for it to feel safe, for them to not be competing too much, because of the few number of funders and how challenging it is for everyone in a place that has thousands of nonprofits for not a huge population comparatively. So that, I think, is the biggest effort that we have going in terms of nonprofit capacity building. But we also do offer technical support within our admin division for nonprofits that are struggling. It's not easy to contract with the government. We have lots of reporting requirements. Many of those are passed to us by our funders, state and federal partners. So we are really working to try and help nonprofits to be successful in meeting not only the outcomes related to services in our community, but also the accounting functions and reporting functions that are required for us to demonstrate we're good stewards of dollars. So hopefully that answered your question, but let me know if you want any more detail.
It does. That's great. Thank you. Great. Anything else from staff on this item?
You know, if I may, just add, we were fortunate to get capacity building dedicated dollars through Human Services Division from ARPA allocations. And we conducted a request for proposal both for kind of general capacity building as well as like technological capacity building. And the technological focus led to many agencies being able to, change out their computers from something, from the 90s to today. Many tablets were purchased. Other kind of system upgrades were made. With the general RFP, we saw a lot of opportunity to support training, both through hiring consultants as well as local trainers to offer more education around diversity, equity, and inclusion, around like general fiscal systems. So all staff, up and down in the agency had an understanding of what would be allowable or not allowable. Board training, I know, was conducted, and then also purchase of learning systems. So onboarding was more simple, for example, because you could just sit someone in front of a computer and they could work through a learning system so that they knew what the focus areas were for the agencies. So a lot of really creative and innovative proposals were put forth and funded and have since occurred. I think the largest challenge with that approach was that the agencies were still running as a result of COVID. And there also was a huge just demand on trainers and consultants. And so I know agencies struggled with that too. And so I think, if in the future there's an opportunity to do something similar, I think agencies would be much more well prepared to be able to take advantage of that. But a lot of really creative and, agency strengthening work was done as a result of those dollars.
And I might end with one more statement of hope because it's hard when we're talking about certain types of funding going away, but just a reminder that starting in November, Medicaid will be investing in housing efforts. It will start with prevention, so folks who are at imminent risk of homelessness, but it should expand to certain populations who need assistance the most. And we don't have a lot of details yet. We do know there are capacity building grants out there as well through our CCOs for housing, nutrition services, and climate services providers to build capacity to be able to bill Medicaid. And so that is an additional funding source that will come into our system. As we know more about how it will be operationalized, we will report that out to you so that you have that information and how the systems will integrate. But the CCOs are being very communicative with us. We have a monthly meeting where we sit down and we talk about the implementation, and they share everything that they know, and we talk about how to partner. So we feel good about that connection between our systems.
Great, thank you very much for that. That's great. All right, so it seems like you, as we head into budget season, you needed to get a sort of sense of where we were to give you direction for how to shape your department's budget for the coming year, and hopefully this was helpful to you. Do you need anything else from the board?
No, very helpful. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. I think there's a coalescing around C and D. I hear that very loudly and clearly, and I think it's well aligned with the feedback that you've gotten as well. So thank you for your advisement.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we will move on to item 13. Our Public Works folks are here. We have before us Order 24-02-27-11 in the matter of authorizing county administrator to enter into a 50-year lease agreement with Lane County Sheriff's Mounted Posse. I'll welcome Brett Henry, our Lane County Parks Manager, to the table, and he can introduce his panel for us. Might want to adjust the height of that chair, too. It's a long way down.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yeah, so my name is Brett Henry. I'm the Parks Division Manager for Lane County, and with me
Hold the mic a
today
little closer to your mouth. Great.
are Byron Trapp and Alan Murphy. They're with the Sheriff's Mounted Posse, and they're a very important stakeholder for Lane County Parks, particularly at Howard Buford Park. Some people know that they have the horse arena out there, and they have big plans. They're going to talk a little bit about that today. So this has been over a 35-year arrangement, and it's gone well over those years. You know, we've seen I think the partnership grow in my tenure, and we're really, really grateful for everything they do. Obviously promote equestrian use, but also provide a sense of security out there. And just recently with the ice storm, those upper trails were really bogged down with a ton of vegetated debris, and so they're able to get their horses up there and give us a kind of a bird's eye view of the condition of those trails, and it really helped us put together an assessment for our contract. And so currently we're working on getting the park reopened, and we think we're just a couple weeks away from that. Today what we're talking about is a lease, and I'm excited. You know, it's been a long time coming. We've since I started in 2018, have talked about it, and happy to say that, we've come to a conclusion. And so this is a little over 5 acres. It's the area in the North Bottomlands part of the park where their arena is, and we're looking at a long-term lease for 50 years. And so after 5 years, we'll review the terms and have the option for extending in longer, or take a look at the recitals and see if we want to change some things. So I think it's a good process. It's one that we use with our other partners, Friends of Beaufort Park and Mount Pisgah Arboretum. So on February 12th, the Parks Advisory Committee recommended that we enter into the lease agreement with the Sheriff's Mounted Posse. So got their support, and certainly I want to say we have very strong support with Lane County Parks as well in this lease. So I think to start, we'll have Byron. He'll go through a PowerPoint presentation with you guys, and also want to tell you thanks for your patience. There was a couple errors in the board packet, and I'm glad that you guys were able to make those corrections in a quick manner.
Thank you, Commissioner Trigger and Commissioners. Thank you for sharing your time with us this morning. So I was just going to give a quick, let's see where we're at here. Oh, there's a new slide. They told me. So can you guys see it's on this computer, but I don't know how it gets to that computer.
That's a technical question.
Yeah.
The instructions, right? Or,
Steve
Tanya, do you
probably
have the PowerPoint uploaded? Because she can run it remotely if this has been sent.
Well,
to
it was
Tanya.
on here. They told me how to bring it up on the
Should be
computer.
instructions right there on the table somewhere.
Swipe the mouse. Okay.
Steve, you have teenagers. This should be easy for you.
It's easy for the teenagers.
Truth behind that.
We're going to have to get Seneca down there in a minute.
Right here. Is that it?
If you'd like to, I can see if Tanya can just run it remotely, and you can just next slide when you need to. Tanya, do you have this uploaded?
Yeah, I can look for it. Do you want me to just give you instructions how to share it?
Sure. Either way.
Or can you just run it and he can say next slide as he moves through it?
Yeah, let me pull it up. Hang on.
Yep. That's usually where we land when we get to this point.
They're getting an unexpected intermission.
Oh, here comes maybe Cameron to the rescue, perhaps. Whoever gets here first, either Cameron get this one share or Tanya to bring up a shared screen, whichever comes first, we'll take it.
Zoom at the bottom.
I was happy I got the PowerPoint open. I didn't know it was more than that.
Say this would be a good picture for Dan Swanson. There we go.
All right.
Go. Good job, Cameron.
Okay.
Thank you, Cameron. All right.
Are we there? Okay, we're still there. Perfect. Okay. So, as Brett spoke of, this is the footprint of the lease area and the arena that exists there. Start with a quick history of the posse, just real brief overview of who we are and why we're here with you today. The posse was started over 83 years ago, or nearly 83 years ago, in 1941. Originally created both serve the community, but to assist the sheriff, and in the early years assist the sheriff with blackouts during World War II. Early on, also provided the sheriff with an understaffed sheriff's office, which seems weird to hear. with extra staffing with volunteer service. However, as time has passed, more modern times are less accepting of volunteer service in general law enforcement. So the posse's main focus over the years became more targeted at search and rescue and general public service. Today, they still remain an active part of the Sheriff's Search and Rescue Program and very integral in any of the mounted responses. This is probably what we're most known. Oh, let me see here. There we go. That's all right. We'll just shoot from the hip. What the posse is most known for today is our ambassadors of public relations for the sheriff. Most known, or most commonly, you see us in the community in the various parades over the course of the year. A couple of winter parades in Springfield and the Rhododendron Festival in Florence and the Crestwell 4th of July Parade. Also ride in parades outside the county. This last year, the posse participated in the Lynn County Veterans Day Parade. Our primary and really only fundraising program of the year is parking management at the county fair. So if you park on fairgrounds property during the county fair, you'll probably be assisted by a posse member. And that provides our funding annually to cover our expenses of our operations. The posse conducts mounted patrols of the HBRA, providing assistance and information to park users. This was begun really from a coordinated effort with the Arboretum, the Friends of Buford Park, the Sheriff's Office, and Park Management to address an increasing nuisance property crime problem at the park over the years. And our patrols provide a uniform presence in the park, both on the trail systems and parking lots, that help mitigate some of the criminal activity. And you heard Brett speak about it. I don't have the pictures for this on there, unfortunately, but the posse was provided some trail assessments on mounted patrols a couple of different times to help with the staff that's managing the storm cleanup, identifying what kinds of resources they need on which trails and how to prioritize their cleanup efforts out there. Just another example of the ongoing partnerships that exist in the park between the park partners out there at the facilities. I think this looks like maybe where we are. In over about 36 years ago, the posse started managing the arena at the HBRA. It was essentially where the X is, close to the river, and it was dismantled in 2000 because it was determined to be too close to the waterway and was moved up to higher ground and away from the river where it sits today. Notably, the posse, when the arena was moved, used its own funds, resources, and manpower to reconstruct the arena where it sits today and has maintained it on an ongoing agreement with the parks since 1988 under its own funds and resources. And it's in the memo in your packet, but it says the North Bottomlands HBRA Master Plan states that here in the North Bottomlands, an expanded equestrian center is proposed, which features ample parking for vehicles and horse trailers, a mounting ramp, additional competition courses, watering facilities for horses, and restrooms and drinking water for riders. And in keeping with the master plan, the posse hopes to continue development of the park's equestrian center. I think this is a different PowerPoint than I was expecting, I think, so we'll just work our way through it here. Here we go. Near-term goals include adding a cover over the arena. This is a architect rendition from an aerial photograph of generally what is being conceived at this point. And then this would allow use in the spring and fall. Right now, that's prohibitive with horse footing, and the arena grounds are very wet and muddy. And in conjunction with that, ideally adding a pervious solid surface parking area to support wet season parking for vehicles and trailers. Right now, if in the winter months, if you get off that asphalt that you see there, it gets pretty boggy and will damage the ground as well as potentially get vehicles stuck. So we're pretty limited in to late spring to early fall when the ground's relatively dry. I think that covers the slide. So essentially what the posse's hoping for today is that this lease goes forward to allow us the ability to continue with fundraising efforts with a little longer term prospect on the property that will be more advantageous to fundraising. And development of the park will certainly be a resource for Lane County residents and equestrian users throughout the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind shutting the program so that the viewers can see the full screen for the panel for the conversation. Thank you. Great. Perfect. Appreciate that. Anything from other panelists before I turn it over to the board?
I just want to reiterate the strength of the partnership with all three groups, including the posse out there at Howard Buford Park, and just how instrumental they are to our operations. We couldn't do it without them. So we're certainly really thrilled to present this before you today, and we're sorry about the technical errors.
Good. All good. I will turn it over to the, oh, sir.
I just had one comment. Am I on?
Yep. You are.
Okay. What we're talking about doing is actually the culmination of plans that have been going on for decades. And the 1994 plan that Byron referred to is where the first original plan was set out for the use of the park. And in there is where the North Bottomlands were designated as an area to be developed for equestrian center. Unfortunately, nobody said who was going to take the leadership or pay for it. So here we are, 30 years later. But what we would like to do is take the leadership, and hopefully we can come up with some funding to begin to accomplish some of those things. A cover over the arena is pretty basic because we can't ride in there until the spring rains are over with, and we have to quit as soon as the fall rain shows up. So we're really only got about 3 or 4 months out of the year we can really depend on it. So that's just a little background on where we're headed or why we want to do it.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the board for conversation. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One references a slide, but the first one is, given that you're a volunteer group, what kind of patrol activity are you allowed to do there at the park?
When the patrol program was initiated some years back, the Sheriff's Office created general orders that specifically cover the amount of patrols in the Mount Pisgah Park area, HBRA. And so the posse has always been an armed posse and continue to be armed at this point, that and sworn special deputy sheriffs. So they don't have the training of a full reserve deputy sheriff that you'll see in a regular traditional sheriff's uniform. That we don't normally in our commission have powers of arrest and enforcement, so it's on a very limited role and very specific direction from the sheriff and where we can exercise any enforcement presence. And so this is not an enforcement role. The general order is very clear that posse members are there in uniform to represent the office of sheriff and to be a deterrent and a presence for the community that uses that park. But if anything is observed that is inconsistent with park rules or county ordinance or state law that the posse members that are engaging in the patrol are to call the sheriff's office. Dispatch, they'll send a regular deputy out to assist. And then the other part of the patrol presence is that the general order mandates that the patrols carry first aid and water and be a resource to park users. And if somebody's in need of assistance on a trail, the posse members are able to provide that. They carry brochures of the park maps, trail maps, and can provide a broad range of assistance to park users.
Thank you for that. The other question was almost the last slide, where it had kind of a drawing of the potential development. I'm not sure if that's part of the long-term parks master plan mapping of that area. Yes, that one, thank you. And I see where the arena is on the right in the center.
Right.
What is all that development above that? And is that the map that you're kind of going off of development, or you're just talking about the arena and maybe some parking nearby?
No, this was I appreciate the question. I think we probably confused a little bit in the presentation with a different PowerPoint. That this was a PowerPoint given, I think, to Parks and the Parks, what's the group? What's that?
Advisory Committee?
The Advisory Committee, Parks Advisory Committee, and then there's another group. What's the other one out at Pisgah that,
You talking about the Friends of
the
Buford
stakeholders, the stakeholders group that are all partners in the Buford Park. So Friends of Buford and the Arboretum staff. And so this was a presentation some time back that was given. This has existed within the posse for some years, like maybe 20 years. This was an architectural rendition of when the HBR master plan was being developed, of what maybe some of the equestrian facility in its full development could look like. And I think what's depicted on the upper part of the photograph is designated camping spots for equestrian camping with some restrooms, showers and restrooms, and then parking there below the arena and around the arena. I don't know that in the near future any of that will be realized. I think there's now some new created conflicts with the habitat management plan that might preclude any of that had been foreseen or thought of in the past. That habitat management plan would probably need some amending now to even accommodate a larger footprint of the posse, just to have training grounds and trail systems outside of the arena. So I think the habitat management plan has certainly restricted much of that. I didn't intend to have this here to complicate the discussion, so.
Yeah, I think that was a really good catch. So that was a rendering that was done like 20 years ago before the habitat management plan was passed in 2018. So I think, now there are certain stewardship activities that are planned in those areas and are adopted as part of the habitat management plan. So, we were just talking about just that area there around the arena, and that's where we're going to start, and we're going to be looking at some parking, I think, as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Thanks for all your hard work. Makes it a lot easier to put time and money into a place when you know you have 50 years. I see the pride you guys take in that place already, and it's very encouraging. So thanks for showing up, and appreciate the presentation.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Trigger. It's good to see you here after all this discussion. This feels like a bit of a culmination, although maybe it's just a view of what is to come. You're talking about what does a patrol do, and Sheriff Byron, you talked about providing first aid, providing water, providing guidance, assistance, just being on the trail there, assisting people. But really, my question, Chair, is surrounding what happened after the ice storm. I'm intrigued to hear how that came about, that you provided trail surveying and feedback. Can you talk about that just for a few moments?
Yeah, well, I'd done that before in the past, myself and another person after a windstorm. So after the ice storm, we had some Zoom meetings and we're talking about what the situation could be out there, and nobody had actually been out there to look at the trails. And you couldn't get very far on some of them because of windfalls. And there was so much effort put on just trying to get across the bridge and onto the roads and to the end of the roads that the trails hadn't been looked at. So I offered for a couple of posse teams to assess the trails. And so we had, I think it was the Tuesday after the storm, after things started to melt, we had 2 teams out on the west side of the mountain that ran all those trails out there, and they got as far as they could and took pictures of where the big tree piles were. And then the next following Monday, after another rainstorm and some more wind, we went in from the east side, the same 2 teams, and rode all those trails and took pictures and reported on the condition on the trails. And so it went to the friends who were going to manage the volunteers that were clearing trails, and they devised they knew where to focus and where the worst problems were. So that was our contribution.
I'll provide a bit of an alliteration. On your sure-footed steed, just surveyed the situation.
Well said.
And Brett, the result was, can you talk about the result? How did that help you?
Well, that was essential because we were not able to assess those trails, and we couldn't even get up there. There was just so much debris that was just blocking access even to safely get up there. So we needed to put the scope to work together for our contract to remove the debris, and so without their assistance, it would have taken a heck of a lot longer. And I know everybody wants the park back open, so.
Thanks for that. And we're hearing on a regular basis, when is the park going to open? When's the park going to open? I would perceive then that sooner than it would have if the posse hadn't been there.
Yeah, exactly. It took all of us working together, and that's just one example of the teamwork that happens with each one of these groups, and what we can get done. And it was a massive. I mean, we really. You guys remember the snowstorm and the damage there, but this ice storm really impacted that Springfield area. And you can think about just all the thousands of trees at the park and nearly 30 miles of trail, and certainly want to keep the public safe. And, them just getting up there was just really crucial for us to be able to even put a scope to work together and to get the contract process going.
Well, thanks for that picture. That's something that I hadn't even envisioned as a possibility, but to see that in reality and project for the future. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event, we hope, but to know that you're on the ball and ready to step in at a moment's notice, in effect, and get that park back open to where our people can be using it again, and we can get equipment in there. Horses can go where other modes of transportation can never go, but to get equipment in there and fix the park and get it back to work, and bravo. I'm really pleased and excited. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Boy, you guys really had me going on that camping slide there. I was getting all excited about that. I don't know what the heck happened, but maybe we should turn the clock back. I read the lease. I think the county's in a great position. You guys are going to do this for 5 years. You've got all the responsibility of maintenance, utilities, and all that stuff on you. And Byron, you said that your main source of revenue is parking cars. And I looked at the size of that roof over your arena, and that's a lot of cars, my friend. So I'm just wondering, also in your lease, it says that you guys are prohibited of doing events there unless it's specific to fundraising events to your organization. And as you know, horse people bring money. Okay, can I just say that out loud? And you guys have a very viable, I think, an economic generator that would be a real benefit to the community if you could do some events there to raise money quicker for that roof. I'm thinking that roof's going to cost you $150K, maybe?
500.
500,000? Oh, see, I'm cheap now, see, so.
That's basic.
That's basic, right? Yeah, so that's, how many cars is that? Let's do the math. But my point is that I think that, with the excitement of that campground, and I don't know how far off the map it is, but I think there's a real potential for the county to have an equestrian center headed by a group of, integrous people that are community-minded and law-abiding minded and moral-minded that would be a real benefit to the community. And I would hope that some of those clauses in your lease could allow you to do that on a freer basis. So that's my only real concern about the contract is, you guys need the opportunity to make the money where you can to pour it back into the community, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to say there's no restriction for them to conduct fundraising activities and events. We certainly support that in the 50-year lease, and we also understand that, they have big plans, and so the lease could grow as, their capital investments grow as, they move through this. But we certainly want to support them in their endeavors.
Yeah, well, thank you for all you do. You guys are a great service to the community. Hats off.
I'd like to say one more thing about that. We're in conversation with a lady that does fundraising. That's been her career. And she says she can help us.
There you go.
And like you said, there's money out there.
Yeah.
And I don't think Brett would mind if we spend it out there at the park instead of asking him for it.
Yeah, nowhere to, a roof in Byron's lifetime would be good, right, Byron?
Yeah.
And the lease can grow.
Yep.
Great. Well, I will just, on that, I have a couple of questions. I'm supportive. I just want to ask some questions. Is there such a thing as horseback pickleball? I'm feeling a fundraiser coming on.
That would be interesting. With a new Yeah, I don't think
It's
that would
polo,
work.
it's pickleball. Right?
Maybe polo, yeah.
You might be able to do that out there at the arena. I mean, you come up with the rules and we'll try to make it work.
But I am curious, is it's a $1 a year lease, which is sort of not an unusual thing, but have any other groups ever approached us? Or the other side of that is, what, if any, other groups might be able to use the facility once it's created? Do folks board horses there? Is this just for the posse's animals?
Well, for the, I don't know how to go back and find a photo, but the aerial photo that shows the footprint of the lease shows the arena and the core of that. And really, that is the only improved part of the equestrian facility at this point, which has been in that form since essentially 2000. And it is used by other user groups. There it is. So that the end of the asphalt road there, past the north parking lot, terminates right there at the arena grounds. And there's a wooden fence structure around that, and on the north side you see a dark spot there. That's a elevated announcer stand, and it does have lights and a bit of a sound system around it that can be used for events. The posse, under the current agreement that we've enjoyed since 1988, when the posse started managing the arena, has been essentially a year-to-year agreement that allows the posse to use and manage that facility in exchange for the maintenance of the grounds. And part of that is that the posse, under that agreement, has always had the authority to rent out the arena facility to any group that wants to rent it, and we manage that for Lane County Parks and get special use permits and otherwise to make that work. So primarily throughout the summer months, the other user groups are 4-H, Youth Equestrian Program, and the Eugene Pony Club, which is a youth and younger equestrian program. There are other adult equestrian groups that have used it, the Backcountry Horsemen, and Alan can jump in if there's another one or two that I'm not thinking of. Just most recently, this last summer, there was a equestrian family that had a wedding out there that used the arena for their facility for their wedding. So there are opportunities for other revenues that can, and if the grounds get developed and become a little bit more usable and functional, those opportunities just expand. And so the posse has tried to be very generous to the youth programs. We've waived fees to rent the arena for any youth program, just to encourage a youth equestrian activity and to make their participation. They come to us from Pony Club asking the posse to sponsor some of the kids in the group because they couldn't afford the fees and stuff that went with it. And so if we can eliminate the cost for 4-H and Pony Club to use the arena, then the kids' costs individually go down. And so those are some of the focus efforts that the posse has been engaged in over the years when it comes to trying to encourage the youth to be involved in those programs.
So does the posse have its own entity? Are you organized as a 501c something?
We are.
Is it a 3? Is
It's
it
a 501c3
You are a
nonprofit, yes.
Okay, charitable organization, so for your fundraising, that's helpful, terrific. And then my only other question is probably more of a comment. I was just looking at how this interplays with the existing board order from 2017, and I went back, and that was really just a sort of statement of commitment of partnership, because I was thinking, why are we signing a 50-year lease when we have this 40-year agreement with 33 years left on it? But is that right? They really just are sort of complementary. This is really about securing the property so you can move forward and make plans and know you have a facility.
Correct.
And the other is really just an agreement to say, we appreciate what you're doing and the partnership there. So they're
Yeah,
not,
that's a cooperative.
they're not exclusive, and
Right.
the other one doesn't need any changes to it or to be withdrawn. Okay, just making sure of that. Great, okay. Anything else from the board, from our panel? And I would entertain a motion.
Chair, I move that the county administrator is delegated authority to enter into a 50-year lease agreement with the Lane County Sheriff's Mounted Posse for the development, operation, maintenance, and security of a 3.36-acre area within the Howard Buford Recreation Area as per order 24-02-27-11.
I would love to second that.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Lovall, seconded by Commissioner Farr to move approval of Order 24-02-27-11 in the matter of authorizing county administrator to enter into a 50-year lease agreement with Lane County Sheriff's Mounted Posse. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. To end on a good note. Winding it down, we are at Commissioner's business. I will look to see if there are any announcements from commissioners today. Commissioner Buck?
This probably would have fit better in our remonstrance earlier, but I just realized this is our first board meeting back since we were able to go to the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference earlier this month. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about that. I have to say it was one of the better conferences that I've been to. I think it might be my fourth so far. And for residents out there who wonder what we do there, because their taxpayer money is sending us there and what we learn, one of the most poignant things that I was able to do and learn while I was there that I think really does affect our county, and I can share feedback in a really effective manner, is being able to run into commissioners from different areas all over the world and having the chance to just happen to sit down at breakfast in the morning and have the commissioner, they call council member, from Lahaina, Maui there. And we were able to have a really nice discussion with our chair and myself about their emergency response and recovery in their area, and compare where we are in our recovery, where they are, what the differences are, and actually be able to come back and advocate for things to go a little bit differently in the future for whatever next natural disaster is there, and how we can bounce off information. Additionally, just being able to stand in line to get lunch, and I was standing in front of another commissioner who was there alone in line, and so we just decided to share a table and chat. And that commissioner was from Tampa Bay, Florida. So we had conversation for at least 2 hours about emergency management and how they do it differently and how they're getting recovery funds And they're on cycles of getting FEMA reimbursable disaster recovery funds on a very regular basis, because they have several disasters a year, and have come to very routine operation of how they fulfill the disaster FEMA information, get the funds, how they divvy it out, and how we did it here. And hopefully, we'll do it again if FEMA is able to disperse money from the ice storm just recently. So I want to share that both with the board and also with the public, so they know exactly what we're doing. We have several seminars about very pertinent information that affects counties and our departments every single day. We're able to compare notes, learn new things, new ways in order to improve our own systems here at the county. And for those that haven't been yet, I would highly encourage you to take a chance to go in the future. There is a large amount of benefit from these trips and what you can bring back to the county and just make ourselves better along the way. So I apologize for not including that in remonstrance, but this was the only next best area to share that information.
Thank you. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Trigger. And I wasn't going to mention it, but beyond that, Commissioner Buck, we're able to help other counties and enlist other counties' help in some major efforts that we put forward. For instance, we'd prepared a resolution on mental health parity and addiction equity regarding the Act of 2008 that hadn't been moved forward on with the legislature. We got the assistance of other counties, and we were able to really, I think, spark national attention to what I think is going to be a major effort in the future in bringing mental health treatment in Medicaid up to, I had it right the first time, Medicare, up to the level of physical health, which drags private providers up to the same levels, providing an equity of services. Maybe Chair Trigger is going to talk about this, but we wrote the resolution. I was going to carry it. I didn't go to NACO because I had what I would consider to be better things going on this end of the continent. But Chair Trigger carried it forward, and I think you got a standing ovation, maybe. Did they carry out on their shoulders? It looked pretty good from the pictures I saw. So well done with that. One thing I wanted to mention, Mr. McCracken, I didn't have a chance to mention this during the meeting this morning, but this is a good time to talk about it, and that is regarding the presentation that we had this morning on services and hate crimes and bias crimes. A question that I have is regarding human trafficking, and not regarding youth and the human trafficking that we envision, but regarding squads of workers who are transported, sometimes from one state to another, often transported by what's commonly called coyotes, who bring people in to not just work on agriculture, and we know there's an issue with the marijuana cultivation, for instance, but also on construction sites, where construction workers are used, they're paid cash kind of under the table, they're paid well below a minimum wage, and they're also, in some ways, it seems almost conscripted into the service. And I wonder, Ms. Mokarakis, I don't think we've really paid a great deal of attention to that, and I don't know where that falls into our attention level, but it is happening, and the net loss is to our community in terms of economic development, for one thing, but it's the losses to the men and women who are being moved around, and sometimes they and their families are actually being placed in jeopardy unless they continue with the work. I just wanted, and Chair Trigger, I didn't interrupt the meeting this morning with that, but I did want to point out that this is something that's going on, and it's something that really does fall to the level of hate and bias, and something that I think we should pay more attention than we have been paying to it. I did learn two terms this morning, Zoom bombing. I now have a clearer focus on that. And then there's another term that I'm going to start using more often, nefarious actors. That term was used that we have, it's nefarious actors that provide the Zoom bombings, but there are nefarious actors that do lots and lots of other things. Sometimes it's not as nefarious as a Zoom bombing, but we have people among us who act nefariously. So let's be alert and aware to that. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Chair, thank you very much. I have a lag and a brag is what I'm going to call. There's a lag. The ice storm seems to be kind of in a rearview mirror, and it's maybe not on our radar as much as it is. Still, for those folks in the Mohawk Valley are still without internet. I got an email this morning that said several of the areas in Mohawk Valley are still without internet and are not getting credits on their bills from non-service. And they wanted me to call out and make accountable CenturyLink and Spectrum, who use our county's right-of-ways for their transmission lines. And I would like to call them out to be accountable to our people and be fair and in a more timely fashion and get their repairs done, as most of the other folks around the county have already done. So that's my lag. The brag that I have is downtown Springfield has some really exciting things going on to it. Our Springfield Chamber of Commerce awards were a couple of weeks ago, and it was at the Wildest Theater. It was packed. We had Business of the Year, et cetera, those kinds of awards, and it was kind of like being at a Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl kind of party. Something you'd never expect in your lifetime. You know, but it was really a charged party. And there was a couple of announcements last couple of days. Downtown Springfield has announced that Oakshire Brewery is putting a flagship meeting house and restaurant at the new project being built by Masaka Properties at the corner of 5th and Main. And there are other great developments underway that are going on in some of the vacant properties around downtown. And it's the first time in 150 years, at least that I can research in history, that there's 9 properties within a 2-block radius of downtown Springfield that they could redefine who they are in the future. And I think there's a lot of hope and momentum going on in our community, and I'm just really proud of all those that are involved. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, then I will piggyback onto both Commissioners Farr and Buck. I think your comment, Commissioner Farr, about folks coming here to work in dangerous and unsafe conditions remind me we did approve a grant for the Sheriff's Office specifically to go after illegal grow activities. And I don't know that we've heard anything back. Is that coming at any time? Do we know a report back on the illegal on the grants Sheriff's Office got for the illegal grows, just to hear how?
Need to check on that. I don't know.
So if that's something, I mean, maybe I'm jumping ahead to assignments, but maybe that's something we'll want to, so hold that thought. I'm glad Commissioner Buck brought up the NACO Legislative Conference, because I also forgot about it during remonstrance. And I agree. I think it's important for people to know what we're doing. We're down that week to make it possible for as many of us as want to attend. And as was mentioned, we get to meet commissioners from all over the country. We also get to meet agency heads and folks working in federal agencies that help and sometimes fund the work that we do here. So it's a great chance to build relationships, learn more, bring information back. To the resolution that the Health Policy Committee heard that I carried in Commissioner Farr's absence, it was a really interesting opportunity. It was just unanimously supported with one amendment that was interesting because it was an amendment that in our state, and therefore our county, we don't consider because we don't have a military base here, but they wanted to add TRICARE insurance programs for active military and veterans. And so it was just a great example of how we can all help each other do better and support one another by taking that amendment to a resolution that we were carrying.
I love the picture of you up there with all the cards being held up.
Oh, with everybody voting on the, I haven't seen that picture. I want to see it. So it was great. Our administrator was there as well because there are other county administrators from all over the country. So I'm sure similar information sharing and learning. So it is a great opportunity, and specifically because it's a legislative conference. It's in DC, it's in the Capitol, so there's also opportunity to get inside tours of Capitol building, to meet with some of our federal delegation. It's just a very exciting, fruitful, and we also get to see other Oregon commissioners that come and spend time with them and build those relationships, which is also important. It's funny to fly 3,000 miles to spend time with somebody who lives a couple hundred miles away, but there you are, so thanks for bringing that up. With that, we can move on to future board assignment requests. And I guess I did see everybody sort of nodding, even though we weren't officially in assignments, to maybe ask the administrator to check with the sheriff about when we might get a report back on the activities under that grant about the illegal grow operations. That would be great. Any other assignment requests? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't think, Mr. Mokarowski, this rises to an assignment request because you've already covered it during the question that I asked earlier regarding what are we going to do between now and March 13th, which is the deadline for the City Council, Eugene City Council's action. I don't think that's an assignment, Mr. Mokarowski, but I see your head nodding that it's in your mind.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Just for clarity, as I understand it, their actual deadline is the 21st, but the 13th is their last meeting before they break for spring.
That's it, yes.
So there's that. Any other assignment requests? Seeing none, we'll move on to review of assignments.
I didn't get any. I got some sort of check with the sheriff, which I'm doing now, and make sure that we're following up on the discussion related to the multi-use stadium.
Great.
Which is happening, but I didn't take those as assignments. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So I don't have any assignments.
Okay.
But I do. But I don't officially.
No need for executive session this afternoon. Any other business? Seeing none, I will adjourn us until our regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, March 5th, here in Harris Hall at 9 a.m. We are adjourned.